Hello, I'm Ever, and welcome back to Ever So. This will be the second chapter of The Clairvoyant Boy by Marley's Mayhem on AO3. The chapter's title is The Ghost of a Cloudy Boy. Oboro kept his eyes on this strange green-haired boy who was currently scribbling away in a notebook. The boy was obviously smart, as he already knew 5 languages. But the boy was also odd, as he kept glancing up and straight at Oboro, which shouldn't be possible because Oboro was dead and the boy was very much alive. Oboro decided to test his luck, and he walked up to stand beside Midoriya. The greenette kept writing, not noticing Oboro approach and stand right beside him. Midoriya looked up, directly into Oboro's eyes, and then immediately backed down when he realized who was standing beside him. "What you working on there?" Oboro glazed over Midoriya's shoulder and onto his notebook, which was filled with notes written in some sort of code. Oboro recognized a few English characters, but most of them were unrecognizable. To anyone else, it would have just looked like random small symbols on a page. The teen ignored Oboro and the ghost sign. He had gotten his hopes up that Midoriya could maybe see him, but that, of course, was foolish, thinking as nobody has ever seen Oboro before. Had been getting lonely lately. None of the ghosts he had met seemed very social. Most of them just started insulting a bunch of people before getting frustrated and then started to knock items over. Oboro watched as Midoriya further curled in on himself, hiding the notes from Oboro's sight. "Hey!" the ghost exclaimed, throwing his hands into the air. "I just wanted to see what you were writing. No need to be a jerk." Oboro stuck his tongue out at the boy and began to hover crisscross beside the boy. He knew the boy couldn't hear him, but he would probably have gone insane by now if he didn't commentate on every little thing happening around him. Midoriya sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose and glaring at Oboro. Oboro's mind halted, and he started dumbstruck at the boy. "You can see me?" Oboro's eyes were wide and his jaw was dropped. Midoriya just gave a small nod, his curls bouncing slightly at the motion. The ghost didn't bother hiding his shock or excitement, but he did resist jumping up and down, so he didn't startle Midoriya. There was the sound of a pencil scratching on paper, and Oboro watched as Midoriya slid his notebook across the table to sit in front of Oboro. "We can talk later," was all that was written. Oboro shot Midoriya a thumbs up before retreating back to Hisashi's side. He wished he could just talk to the kid now, but he had a feeling Midoriya wouldn't want to strike up a conversation with someone only he could see. So Oboro started humming some English song he had heard Hisashi singing an hour prior, and began impatiently waiting for the bell to ring. Izuku watched as the ghost hummed beside his English teacher, the floating boy glancing at the clock every few seconds. Izuku was also gazing at the clock. It wasn't out of excitement, but rather dread. He didn't know how well telling ghost off was going to go, but there was a 50% chance he would end up bloody and bruised with no way of explaining how he had gotten the injuries. When the bell finally rang, Izuku stood with the rest of his classmates. He made eye contact with the ghost before moving his hands in a subtle "follow me" gesture. The ghost trailed behind him wordlessly, only starting to talk when Izuku found himself in a deserted hallway with no idea where to go. Follow me. The ghost stepped in front of Izuku. I know where the nearest supply closet is. It was Izuku's turn to follow as the ghost led him down the long hallways. As they walked, Izuku fiddled with his fingers. The ghost seemed friendly enough, but Izuku hadn't been with him for long enough, and he could possibly be leading Izuku to a secluded area before he beat him up. The living boy was partially right, as the ghost did lead Izuku into a small supply closet away from all the other students and teachers. The closet was filled to the brim with spare bolts and screws and a bunch of tools Izuku had never even seen before. He had to stop himself from rummaging through the crates and nabbing a few of parts he had been needing for his most recent side project. Okay, we should be good in here, the ghost said, flashing a thumbs up. This is where Paolo keeps all of his spare tools and stuff, but it's only the second day, so he shouldn't be out of supplies yet. Izuku nodded. He took a deep breath, calming his nerves and gathering the courage to do what was necessary before he turned towards the ghost. Okay, good. Now listen up, because I'm only going to say it once. I do not care who you are or what ultimate beef you have against Yamada-sensei, but wait up, hold up. Ultimate beef? What are you talking about? The ghost's brows furrowed in confusion. His hands waved around dangerously close to Izuku. I didn't have any beef with anyone, and it's rude of you to assume that I do. He pounded his lips in a fake pout. Oh? So then, why are you following Yamada-sensei around? Don't you have better stuff to do? Like, I don't know, giving you better skills or throwing their stuff around the room? To be honest, Izuku had no idea what ghosts actually like doing. He only really interacted with them enough to know they absolutely hated their tether and that they were really annoying. The older teen raised an eyebrow. What? I wouldn't do anything like that, especially not to Hisashi. He's one of my best friends. The ghost rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Well, I mean, he was one of my best friends. Izuku was surprised by the dedication the dead boy had to his friends. He hadn't ever met a ghost that had abandoned their revenge in favor of visiting loved ones. So then, who is your tether? And how long are you still here? Is that where you were yesterday? Do you spend half of your time with Yamada-sensei and half of your time with your tether so that you don't disappear and you can also keep enacting your revenge? That's really smart. I never actually met a ghost who done that before. Once again, Izuku was interrupted by the ghost. Hold on, I'm confused. What is a tether, and why are you so adamant of me being on some sort of revenge plan? Izuku blinked in surprise. If the ghost was best friends with Prison Mike, then he was probably a similar age. The ghost looked around 17 years old, so that means he had been a ghost for at least 10 years. So this ghost had been around for a decade and was asking Izuku what a tether was. Izuku scanned the ghost for any signs that he was lying, but either he was telling the truth or an excellent liar. You seriously don't know what a tether is? The ghost shook his head in response. Okay, so a debtor is basically the person you stayed on Earth to bother. You know, the person you have some huge grudge with? Izuku watched the other teen frown. But I don't have any grudges. Unless you count the one-sided grudge Shoto's cat has with me. But I'm pretty sure that doesn't count because I have no problem with that cat. Izuku just stared. Okay, hold on. You don't have a grudge against anyone. Anyone at all? No, nobody at all. The ghost confirmed, borderline frantic, while waving his hands in front of his chest. Izuku continued to stare. How did the ghost boy exist if he didn't have a tether? The ghosts only stayed on Earth if they had one, unless that was some other way that Izuku had just never encountered before, but that was super unlikely because he had been talking to ghosts ever since he was 4, and they all wanted some sort of revenge. So why was this ghost around? Was it part of someone's quirk? Was it the ghost quirk? An accidental mutterstorm was interrupted by the ghost. Okay, I am not catching all of that. Please, explain, he pleaded. Oh, sorry. Izuku rushed to apologize. I'm just really confused because I never met a ghost who wasn't on some sort of actual revenge. Are you sure you're just not pulling my leg? The ghost nodded. Damn sure. I can assure you I'm not on any act of revenge. Although that does make some sense. I haven't met any other ghosts that haven't immediately started trash-talking the nearest living person. Yeah, that checks out. Izuku winced, rubbing the back of his neck. People only turn to ghosts if they have some sort of grudge, except for you, I guess. They always stay near one of the people they have beef with, always spewing insults and knocking things off desks. It really gets annoying really fast. That's why I was so upset when I saw you fooling Yamada-sensei. But now that I know you're not going to be a bother, I really don't have to worry. The ghost nodded and stuck out his hand. I'm Shirakumo Oboro. Nice to meet you. Shirakumo's eyes widened when Izuku hesitantly took his hand. You can touch me too? This is amazing! Izuku nodded while keeping his eyes on the connected hands. Yeah, I can. Sometimes it's convenient, but other times it just makes me look crazy. Like when I have to dodge people that aren't really there. Oh, and I'm Midori Izuku, by the way. Both teens' hands dropped as they let go. An awkward silence filled the air. You should probably get to the cafeteria if you want to have a chance to eat. Lunch is over in 15. Shirakumo suggested. The ghost watched as Izuku's eyes went wide as he was reminded of the time. Knocking over a mop in the process, Izuku rushed to leave the cramped closet and proceeded to stop as soon as he got outside. He had no idea where the cafeteria was, and 10 minutes was not enough to find one room in the massive school. Even if he got lucky and found the cafeteria in 5 minutes, he wouldn't have any time to actually eat anything before having to search for his next class. Izuku sighed and began to walk towards what he thought his next class was to wear. Before he felt a cold hand on his shoulder, he automatically flinched away from the touch and the hand left. You have no idea where you're going, do you? Shirakumo asked before stepping beside him, hopefully not noticing the way Izuku's heart rate spiked. Izuku shook his head. I memorized the map a few nights ago, but it didn't mark supplies closet. I am definitely lost. The ghost stepped forward. Follow me. I could find any room in this place with my eyes closed. Izuku was led down a few hallways and staircases before they both arrived in a large open space. Long tables sat in rows, and they were covered with a bunch of different students. Izuku could recognize a few of his classmates, not including the Shinso boy that sat in front of him. Making his way to the serving area, Izuku made sure to avoid a certain bronze table. The ghost trailing behind him noticed he didn't comment on it. Just as Izuku was about to grab a plate of food, the ghost stopped him. I don't recommend getting that one, Shirokuma said, pointing to the plate Izuku had been reaching for. It looks easy to eat, but after 2 or 3 bites it explodes everywhere and you probably won't have time to shovel it into your mouth. If you're looking for something tasty but quick, I recommend the onigiri. Izuku followed Shirakumo's finger to a plate sitting at the end of the counter. 3 onigiris sitting on top. Izuku decided to take the ghost's advice and grabbed the plate before making his way to a small single table away from all the other students. You have math next, right? Izuku nodded. Okay, great. Even if you don't finish, Ectoplasm is pretty laid back when it comes to eating in his classroom. He looks kinda scary, but trust me, he's a big softie. Shirakumo shot Izuku a giant grin and began to whisper, even though Izuku is the only one who could actually hear him. Believe it or not, he has more plants in his apartment than furniture. Really? Izuku asked in disbelief. I definitely wouldn't have guessed that. Izuku had imagined Ectoplasm as a very bare, no decoration in sight kind of guy, so it wasn't a surprise when Izuku was shocked by the man's love of plants. Shirakumo nodded while Izuku finished off his meal. Yeah, I've been over a few times. He names every single one of his plants. He is also a firm believer of the theory that plants grow better when you talk to them. He spends a full hour just talking to these plants almost every day. Izuku smiled and pulled out one of his notebooks, jotting down the new information in the ectoplasm section. Shirakumo floated closer to peek at the book. What are you writing? The ghost asked, sitting down on the empty chair beside Izuku, passing through the table to do so. Izuku felt a familiar anxiety bubbling in his gut. I'm writing about the teachers. He began to rub on his arm. It's just a hobby, but I like to analyze quirks and behaviors. Izuku waited for the ghost to get creeped out. He had enough experience with people leaving once they found out about his strange hobby. Izuku doubted the ghost would be any different. He brought his arms up to his shoulder, hugging himself and looking down. He didn't want to have to see the friendliness of Shirakumo's face turn into disgust. But Shirakumo's skin just stretched even wider. That's so cool! Really great for hero work, but it could be also really helpful for detectives or psychologists. Could I read some? Izuku's head whipped up so fast he almost gave himself whiplash. His eyes were wide. You really think so? Izuku's voice was small and disbelieving. I know so, the ghost confirmed. I've interacted with enough heroes to know what's a good trait. Although, I guess you don't really want to be a hero, huh? Because you're in Gen Ed? Unless you tried out for a hero course and just didn't get in, did you? Izuku blinked. No. I was always planning on going into Gen Ed. Shirakumo nodded to himself. It's still a good trait to have. Detectives need it for interrogation, and analysts help people out there all the time. You could probably get a job as an analyst. You definitely got the smarts for it. I mean, you do speak like 10 languages. I don't speak 10 languages, only 5. Besides, I already know about the analyst thing. I already work as one in my spare time. Shirakumo's eyes widened. You do? That's so neat! What's your code name? The ghost had abandoned his seat and was now standing beside Izuku, shifting his weight between his legs in excitement. Izuku stood as well, grabbing his tray to throw away his garbage. He scanned nearby tables to make sure all eyes were off of him. Izuku didn't mind telling Shirakumo his secret because the ghost wouldn't be able to get him in trouble, but the other students definitely could. I used the code name Deku. You probably haven't heard of me. I'm very popular and mainly work with the police. I've commissioned a few heroes, but no big ones. I also sent some work to some bigger heroes, but I doubt they even read it or took it to heart because I doubt they were even that good. Disposing of the garbage on his tray, Izuku began to make his way towards the tray return. Shirakumo trailed beside him, eyes so wide it was almost funny. You're Deku! Like the super well-known within the hero community, especially underground heroes. Eraserhead actually took your analysis to heart. And he's been able to take down villains like 10 times faster. The recommendation he made for his goggles had been a large improvement. The bill and misters were a great touch because he can keep his eyes open for way longer. The pros have been convinced that you're a professional analyst for months now, so quit doubting yourself. What? Izuku yelled, attracting the attention of a few nearby tables. He lowered his voice and turned back to the ghost when the attention of his peers left him. You're lying! There was absolutely no way that pro heroes thought Izuku, a quirkless middle school boy, was a professional analyst. There was absolutely no way his suggestions were that good. Shirakumo shook his head. Nope, 100% not lying. Seriously, you should show them to someone. You could probably get some super fancy college degree. Izuku quickly dismissed the idea, waving his hands in front of himself. As much as Izuku respected the ghost, his idea was terrible. Nobody ever took anything Izuku said seriously, and his analyst was the main and only source of income for things like food, utilities, and rent. Absolutely not! What if they didn't take what I was saying seriously, and then some villain could get away? They wouldn't take advice from someone quirkless, and definitely not from advice from someone who's quirkless and schizophrenic. As Izuku's voice grew louder and more frantic, people began to stare. When Izuku noticed, he slapped a hand over his mouth and his breathing picked up. He was looking at all the people who had caught him ranting to thin air. Cutting through his panicked eyes, Izuku felt someone grab his wrist and lead him away from the eyes watching him. His first instinct was to pull away, but the trembling was making him weaker and the grip was strong. Looking up, Izuku realized he was struck away by Shirakumo, though to anyone else it looked like Izuku was just stumbling around with his arm held out. When the two had made their way further down the hallway, Shirakumo stopped dragging Izuku. The latter pulled his hands away as if it had been burned as soon as the ghost grip loosened. Izuku stomped against the wall and slid his way down to the ground. Shirakumo crouched beside the panicking boy, not touching him, but still close. "Breathe," the older teen commanded, holding his hands in front of him in a not threatening gesture. Izuku obeyed the boy, taking in deep breaths and slowing down his racing heart. He leaned his head against the back wall, keeping his eyes open in case anyone tried to touch him again. Shirakumo stayed by his side, keeping his distance. When Izuku had his breathing back under control, he turned to the ghost, who was no doubt suppressing 1,000 questions for the sake of the living teen. "You okay?" Oboro asked, his eyes quickly analyzing the state of the teen. Izuku nodded. "I'm fine. Ask your questions." He didn't want to prolong the inevitable, and if Izuku didn't answer Izuku's questions now, he may never gain the courage to answer. His panic left his mind in a slight haze, so it would be easier to answer most of them now. Izuku blinked in surprise, but then narrowed his eyes. "Are you sure you're good?" When Oboro got another nod, he continued, "Okay. Are you really schizophrenic?" This time Izuku shook his head. "No. It was a false diagnosis. I'm not quirkless either. But when I told people about my abilities to see the dead, they thought I was crazy, and I ended up with 2 false diagnoses. They put me in the psych ward and everything. Never did anything, though, because I'm not really schizophrenic. I even have medication. I don't take them, though, because it has some pretty strange side effects for someone who doesn't actually have schizophrenia." Shirakumo nodded along. I guess that makes sense," he muttered. It's definitely not fun. Kinda depressing, actually, but it makes sense." Izuku let out a small snicker and opened his mouth to respond, but it was interrupted by the bell. He stood up and dragged a hand down his face, wiping away any remains of the panic he had felt only a few minutes before. "You can ask the rest of your questions after school." Izuku started to walk towards the next classroom. "If you know sign, we can talk when there are others around, but I don't really plan on speaking to you if there are others around. Sorry." Shirakumo floated beside Izuku. "No, I get it. I actually do know JSL and ASL. There was a deaf kid in Hisashi's homeroom a few years back, so instead of just teaching English, he taught ASL too. So I know a good amount. I'm better at JSL, though. Oh, and you don't have to worry about the questions after school. I don't have any more." Izuku just nodded, not willing to speak now that they had entered the crowd of people. Shirakumo floated above the students, looking down to talk to Izuku. Although he was listening, Izuku would not look up to respond. Staring at ceilings for no reason would make him look strange. He had already been caught yelling at thin air, and Izuku didn't want to ostracize himself from his classmates any more than he already had. Shirakumo followed him to his class, and then was off to go find a teacher. Izuku didn't know which one, as Shirakumo had used a civilian name instead of a hero name. Izuku opened his math notebook and smiled to himself. Maybe having a ghost friend wouldn't be so bad. And that's it for the second chapter. I hope you enjoyed. And as always, if you have any pointers or anything really, let me know in the comments. And have a great night or day. And bye-bye.